I have a pretty good idea of what it's like stitching and designing in the US. But what is it really like around the world? I have questions. So today I'm talking to an amazing designer from Australia where we'll learn about her journey to where she is now as an amazing knitwear designer. Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Real Talk with Tian podcast. This is a podcast dishing all the dirt on the realities of running a creative business. My name is Tian, and I'm a designer, technical editor, and business coach. See, since leaving corporate almost a decade ago, I've been doing this amazing work full time. It hasn't always been easy, but it has always been totally worth it. Over the years, I've had the amazing opportunities to work with hundreds of makers just like you and tons of big brands. This has given me a front row seat to what it takes to be successful as a creative business. With this podcast, I'm drawing back the curtains to share with you the behind the scenes of the realities of what it's really like, what it takes to run a successful and fulfilling creative business. Welcome to the conversation. Grab a cup of tea or your favorite beverage. It's time for some real talk. Hello there, Dominique. How are you?
Hi. Good, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. I am so glad to have you on here to talk about your journey. But before we dive into that conversation, I have some quick rapid fire swatch question is what I like to call them because they're just a way to warm us up and to get us to know each other really quick. Okay?
Yep. Sure.
So the first question is, if you were a yarn, what would you be? What's the weight? What's the color? What's the fiber content?
Honestly, I'd probably be art yarn, appreciated by the people who know how to use it and kind of confused by some. And there's a real freedom to art yarn. I like to be very, very free with my options with respect to making. So I think art yarn sort of convinces you which way you want to go with your knitting. You can't tell it. And yeah, that really appeals to me.
Do you have a particular color that's your favorite or fiber content?
I do tend to lean towards purple because I like it and I think it's pretty. Mm-hmm. I do very much try not to knit everything in purple because I feel like I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one on the internet, and I think it's really nice to represent colors that other people can enjoy. I liked your green sweater recently. I'm a big fan of green as well.
I was never a fan of green because I never thought I could wear green, but after wearing, I'm like, I can wear this color and maybe there's other colors I could wear.
Eye-opening, yes.
For my corporate days, it was gray and more gray and black. So I'm branching out. It's been long enough. I can wear green and blues and purple. Purple I can wear, maybe.
That's true, actually. When I used to work in finance, mm-hmm. Everything, gray, black, navy, exactly. And I think actually that's one of the things that's so awesome about this job is that you pick up any color and you can play with it, and it's such a joy.
That's so scary picking out the colors because I have such a hard time picking two colors that might go together, and I'm like, I don't know. So overwhelming.
It's true. When there's that many choices, sometimes I find that it takes me longer to decide my yarn than the actual concept of the design. I'm like, spend a week on figuring out my yarn and then get straight into it, and it's easy to knit. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
Like right now I'm knitted on something and it's just cream and red. Because you know what? I know cream and red goes together.
Yeah.
Nothing exciting about that.
But it can be a real relief if you just want to get on with it.
I just wanted to just get this design idea out of my head. So I'm like, you know what? Those are the two colors. That's it. I'm sick of going through my stash and trying to find colors that I don't know if they would work.
You know what I do when I get really desperate? I pull out various combinations and I put them around the house, and then I spend a few days walking past them, and the one that appeals to me the most, that's the one I pick up.
Okay. You don't have
It's a weird,
cats, do you?
my family's used to it now. They don't even ask, what is the deal with these balls of wool everywhere? I'm like, just figuring out my colors.
Do you
Relax.
have cats? Do you have a dog?
No,
Yeah.
no,
I
I
could
have two children
see.
under 10, but no cats.
Yeah, if I did that, I'd have strands everywhere.
Yeah, that would not be good. No, I must say I have the luxury of being able to do that.
But I love
And my
that
family
idea.
doesn't mind. They're used to it.
I love the idea. I think I will try that in my office and just keep the door closed, but we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll
high
see.
up some. Oh well, cats climb everything, don't they? So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what she can do. Maybe in little bags. That might get a bit involved though.
Oh, they might find a way to get the dog to do their dirty work for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cooperative effort.
Okay, our next question. What is your favorite size needle or hook to work with?
For me personally, I really like to use 4mm, which is US 6.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a very, very loose gauge. So when I'm designing for others, I tend to use between 2.5 and 3.5 to get a similar gauge for that people can actually relate to. So it's a little bit awkward for me, but I'm kind of getting used to it now. So
yeah, that's a big difference in gauge.
it is a big difference. Yeah, huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it took me a little while to figure out where to get there, because I can get gauge if I really concentrate and hold my hands differently, but it diminishes my knit pleasure, and I don't want to be miserable knitting, not even for designing. No.
Yeah, what's the point, right?
Exactly. And it sounds silly probably, but I kind of feel like if you've struggled and been miserable with a design, it somehow makes its way through to the end customer. It's like, don't put the ugly juju in there.
The bad vibes, yes, I get that.
Yeah. So I tend to really try to make it as a pleasant an experience for me as possible, because I do think it translates.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Next question. So if you were going to go away and, away from your stash, there wasn't a yarn store around, and you were going to be gone for a month, what's one yarn and type of project you would bring with you?
Definitely fingering weight yarn, and definitely shawl. One of the reasons why I do so many shawls is that it's just such a free design experience. When you're not thinking about sizing that is constrained from the beginning, I think that it's a blank canvas really. So I find that is always in my bag, always. And fingering singles, I find very enjoyable moment. Yeah, I like plied yarns, but I generally use them for cabling and so on. I haven't done very much cabling lately. I'm just obsessed with lace. So yeah, so lace works very nicely with singles.
Okay, great. What's one pattern you can make or have made over and over again?
I've made quite a few of my Versailles shawl, because people seem to really enjoy wearing it. So I've had my arm twisted quite a few times to make it for people that I love. I was part of an exhibition some time ago, and I made quite a few of them, and I made one that was purple that I loved so much and hoped no one would buy, and of course it got sold, so I had to make another for myself.
So this is this actual sample piece?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you design so you design as well as make samples?
I make samples too, just like for my designs, obviously, and for requests, if it's to promote knitting or whatever, because I tend to give my best friend, she has no making joy or love. She does not in any way understand why we do what we do. but she loves the end product. So it's a very joyful thing that when I make things, she wears them a lot. So she ends up with a lot of my samples. So I do sometimes have to make an extra one if I need to show it somewhere or.
You're a good friend.
Well, she is too. So it works.
Good. So what's in your project bag right now?
All my whack-along projects, because I've got, I think, 3 shawls on the needles for that and a cowl. I do that quite gradually, so I work a little bit at a time on each of them. So that's really, I'm really enjoying doing that. So yeah, they'll take me a little while.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to get some links for your whack-along to put in the show notes so we can share it with people who are interested in learning more about it. Okay. Cool. And then the final quick question is, what is the book that is on your nightstand right now?
A notepad.
A notepad?
Yeah, a notepad. I find myself scribbling things constantly. So I have a notepad, and I find that as part of winding down for the day, I've got 2 young children, so there's a lot of noise in my home at the moment. And I try to be very present with them. So I really don't try, I try not to do any designing while they're awake. And so ideas that might sort of pop up in my subconscious, when it's the end of the day and I'm unwinding, they all sort of come flooding through, and into the notepad they go. So that's my way of winding down before sleep, frankly.
Love that idea.
Yeah, most of my reading is, kiddie books at the moment with my kids. Yeah. Well, because there's so many, toxic messages in a lot of classic books. So I'm very present with their reading, so I can edit as we go.
That is amazing. Yeah. And I totally agree. I mean, my son is a teenager now, so he doesn't need me to edit for him, but I definitely understand 15, 20 years ago, some of the books I was reading, I'm looking back, I'm like, what were we thinking?
Well, yeah, and it can be really challenging, because there's also the fact that other kids are reading certain books and they're very, very popular, and your kids kind of want to participate in that, and you've got to find this line where they can participate in it, but you kind of need to fix it a little for them so that they don't get the wrong things.
Yeah, the little caveats of like, well, maybe, I totally get that. I totally get that. Okay, so now that we've learned a little bit about you, let's dive right in and get into the tougher interview questions. Are you ready?
Hit me.
Okay, so who are you and what do you do?
I'm Dom, and I design knitwear. I love it. Honestly, I do it because I love it. I never thought that I would. It wasn't a plan, but it's so rewarding. It leads me. I didn't really decide to do it, and I really like that, actually. I feel very fortunate that was sort of my path. I put a few patterns on Ravelry for a very ridiculous reason, and got some feedback from people, and getting total strangers who felt moved by what they used, it felt so fantastic. I thought, I'm able to provide something into the world that can bring joy to someone. Why would I not do that more? So yeah, that's why I do it.
Amazing. So what are your pronouns?
She, her.
Okay. And what were you like as a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Honestly, I didn't want to be someone specifically when I grew up. my father was an actor and my mother not. They were quite opposite. And I was always really curious, always asking why. Um, and I drew a lot. I really enjoyed any chance I could get to draw, but I didn't ever dream of being this or that. There were temporary moments where, I thought, oh, I might want to do this or I might want to do that. But really, no. I'm one of those people that tends to absorb themselves in an experience as it's happening, get everything from that I find valuable, and then usually something else, catches my interest, and I follow that. I was very fortunate with my father in particular, who never really demonstrated the future to me as a decision that I had to make. It wasn't, what you need to prepare for the future to be this or that. My family came to Australia as refugees from communism, so it was not an easy path. And I think that, as horrible as that was, it had the positive effect of learning that you can completely start your life from nothing at any point, and it will work out if you work hard enough at it, if you do your best at it. I mean, there are things that are obviously going to be in the way. It's not the same path for everybody. Mm-hmm. But it was a privilege that my parents really didn't tell me, you have to be this or you have to be that. It's very freeing. So no, I didn't actually dream of being something specific. I tried on a few careers. I worked in finance, as I said before, which was not
done that.
It was not for me. It's a very toxic environment. And I wrote medical standards for a while.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I taught economics and math for a while, which I really enjoyed. I have to say, not necessarily the subject matter, but I enjoy finding out what someone's skills are and growing them. I think this is something that you very much relate to.
Absolutely.
It's not really about imposing a particular system on someone. It's about finding, okay, what are they capable of? What are they motivated by? And finding that seed and making it grow. I've always been drawn to teaching of various kinds because that's very satisfying and joyful. And I think in designing, that's a form of teaching as well, because although you're removed and the person who is using your pattern does so on their own, the way that you've approached making a garment comes through, and they can take from that what suits them and grow their making experience, which is, I guess, where maybe the teaching thread is the most common in my experience.
Yeah, I
so satisfying.
agree.
Yeah,
because I see that for a lot of teachers or people in that field who are designers, they have a very different way of looking at writing designs, of writing their patterns and how to present their ideas. It's just so different than someone who has never been a teacher, and how they are presenting the ideas. Because as a teacher, you know how to teach to different learners.
exactly.
You know how to reach out and say, okay, this is what you might want to do at this point, and this is what you might want to do at this other point.
Precise.
And that's exactly what I see when I work on your patterns as a tech editor. I can see exactly where your mind is going. So it makes sense that you used to be a teacher and you used to be in finance, because that comes through so much.
I hope so. I do feel like from the feedback that you get from knitters, one of the beautiful things about being an independent designer is that knitters actually have access to you, is that I do think a lot of that comes through. Yes. And that is extremely rewarding, because you then also keep adding to that. As you see how people are reading the information that you're providing, you see where there is opportunity to include more people, more styles of knitters, and go, okay, this might not be working for some. What might work for them? It's a wonderful exercise Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. As an independent designer, you have more flexibility where a magazine, they just don't have that ability to reach every different type of learner. They
No,
have their
no,
standards that they have to work within. And as an independent designer, you can change your standards and adjust it to your audience as needed. So, yeah,
exactly.
total sense.
I love it.
So, you said that you didn't really have a thing that you wanted to be when you grew up, but how did you start in designing? How did you get to where you are now?
Um, I'd say by accident, but not really. I do think that the seed of who you are is always with you. Um, it's easier to see how you ended up where you were when you look back versus when you go forward, I find. I've always selected things that, excuse the cockatoos, that have a great deal, that offer some freedom to express yourself without the constraints of, look, one of the things that really bugs me is that we live in kind of a binary society where things are either good or bad, where you're either skilled or unskilled, whether you're smart or stupid. I reject that on all levels. I really think that everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a unique and incredible mix of skills that, drive them and inspire them and bring into the world something if you don't kill it. And I think, that's possible in any industry. It is, with enough hard work. But in some industries, that's less torturous to get out. And I think in creative industries in particular, there is some room to both self-express, but also to encourage other people to express. So, with drawing and, I've done art programs with children over the years. So I've always been involved in creative things. And obviously, when I picked up knitting, I just loved it so much. It was the birth of my son. Where I live, I'm quite remote from family and stuff. So with my husband, he works like 3 hours away from home. I needed some specified quiet period once every now and again. And there was a knit group up the road. So I thought, okay, I'll go to that and see what that's like. And when I did, it was the Knitters Guild of New South Wales, and they were having a show of, promoting the guild, promoting handicrafts, and they were asking for knits so that they could have a display. So I gave them some of my knits because I had a lot. And then I found out that you had to provide pattern details for the knits. And I was in an absolute panic because they were all mine. I hadn't followed a pattern. I had made them myself. So I thought, what do I do? What do I do? And so I wrote down what I did for each thing and I put it on Ravelry. But of course I panicked because I thought, oh, I don't want people downloading these things because they're just so I don't get in trouble with the guild, which of course I never would have gotten in trouble with the guild, but back then I didn't really understand. Yeah, I didn't. So I put a price on them, figuring if I block with a price, no one will want this. And then people started to buy them. And I was, of course, after the panic of, no, don't do that, please, for the love of God, don't buy these things. They're not real. They're just so I don't get in trouble from the guild.
That's just so funny how artists are just like, don't buy my thing. Don't buy it. I'm going to put a price on it. Don't buy it.
I am quite sure I'm not alone in that. Yeah.
No, you are not. And what time frame was this?
Golly, 5 years ago, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I saw that people did buy them, it compelled me to improve them. Obviously, I thought, look, if you're going to buy this, let me update this and make it make sense and stuff, So, and when I started to do that, I got some. Just, what it's like. When sometimes people take the time to contact you, to email you and tell you about their experience knitting something. about who they knit for and how that made them feel. And I was so blown away by the beauty of that exchange. I thought to myself, I can do this. I can bring this to the world, and whoever needs it can have access to it. And that's amazing. And I get to do that. So I continued. But yeah, it was a ridiculous start.
Well, that's just an amazing start of just like, don't buy it, but then they did, and then they're having this amazing experience with your pattern, which, you know, as someone who's worked with your patterns, yeah, I know. I know exactly what they mean.
I hope so. You know, you really want to be the reason why someone had a good time with their knitting.
Right.
That's important. I almost don't care about the final product.
Yeah,
you know,
I think for a lot of us designers, that's exactly the kind of feeling we want to put out into the world. It's not about, oh, well, X amount of people are making my pattern. If it's just that one person who is making our pattern and they're having this amazing experience, that's just like the cream on top. It's just like
it really,
the world.
Yeah, yes,
Just
you know,
that
to be there with
feeling.
people
Yep.
through joy, through grief, through celebrations, to be a part of that on some level is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, just to be a part of their day, an hour of their day. Maybe it's, you know, they've been working on your pattern for like a year, and they can see all the ups and downs that they've had over the year as they're working in your pattern. It's those feelings that's like, oh, this is why we do it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so based off of what you were just saying about the amazing feelings you're getting from designing, if you weren't doing this work, what else would you be doing right now?
Probably working with kids. Yeah. I'm kind of, I don't subscribe to some of the, it's a really hard thing to put into words, but some of the grown up things that, when people are adults, they really get a little bit, they take themselves quite seriously. They think that they're just a little bit important, and that's such a crock. It really is. I'm sorry. It totally is.
It's adulthood. It's just so hard.
It can be, yes. And one of the things that kind of keeps me feeling sane is I really do relate most of my decision making back to, 6-year-old me. I think the 6-year-old me think organically this is a good idea? And if 6-year-old me thinks, actually, that's a jerky thing, or that's an empty thing, or that's a wanky thing, or that's a rubbish thing, then I don't do it. Unless, there's obviously things you must do, but I do let child me guide things, and that makes it very easy for me to access children, so kids are quite comfortable with adults who remember their kid self. So I do very much enjoy interacting with children, boosting their esteem, and navigating through some of the challenges that they have. So yeah, probably I'd be working in kid education on some level, either through arts or navigating the joy of math. Because
the joy of math.
Well, it can be a joy. It can be a joy, but I actually do think that, from my experience anyway, the way that it is taught is, again, so limited that it excludes plenty of people who would otherwise understand it and utilize it and enjoy it, but don't, because the way that it is presented is only for some minds, not all minds. And finding those gaps, collecting those children, giving them an option, that is so rewarding. So yeah, I'd probably be doing that, because it's kind of like what we do with our network, really, presenting options for people to find their making, find what makes them feel confident, what makes them feel proud, and giving them alternatives to express that. So yeah, I'd probably be doing something with kids.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
We'll be back to the episode in literally 90 seconds. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsors.
This episode of the Real Talk with Tian podcast is brought to you by possibly the most important training for crochet and knitwear designers and tech editors. Pattern Graded Made Easy, Learn to Grade Like a Pro, Self-Study. This course has helped hundreds of designers and tech editors learn the skills to level up and create patterns that are size inclusive. When we're talking about making designs bigger, it's not just about making the numbers larger. It's about the proportions and considerations of the bodies the designs will fit. I've been there, struggling to figure out pattern grading and how it all worked, figuring out the formula. With the years under my belt as a renowned designer and sought after tech editor, I'm sharing all I know so you can avoid all the trials and error and start creating patterns that are size inclusive. So if you don't want to be that designer, you know the ones who think adding more sizing to their sweater pattern is too hard and too expensive, they don't value all bodies, and God forbid, they'll be promoting obesity. Oh, clutching my pearls. If you're ready to create patterns that are focused on every body, then join Pattern Graded Made Easy Self-Study and start grading like a pro. For more information, go to bit.ly/pattern grading self-study. Again, that's bit.ly/pattern grading self-study. Now let's get back to the show. So if you can go back to your 18-year-old self and you can give her one advice, what would that be?
To spend less time probably worrying about the impact of not catering to other people. I feel like from my experience in life, you know, we all do it. It's natural. Everybody projects their worldview onto how they observe experiences. And one thing I've noticed is that, you know, your worldview is not necessarily the same as mine. And I don't think it's my job to carry that. It's my job to, yes, absolutely take into account how my presence in the world affects someone else, just like I would hope that they would do for me. But honestly, yeah, there's a lot of, we as a society, we're very competitive, we're very egotistical, we're very elitist, and a lot of the time, if you do not follow that path, if you do not show your skills in a specific way, people feel comfortable to diminish those skills, to tell you that, you know, oh, that's not worthy, that's not important, why are you wasting your time with that? And it's really hard to block that out. So I think, yes, the advice I would have given myself is not to have worried about that so much, because I did. I felt, you know, when I did a lot of things that were not on the path for me, they were not expectations that people had of me. And every time it was, you know, why are you doing that, etc. It gets into you. You question, oh, am I making wrong decisions, or am I simply following my path that someone else can't understand? And I really do think if you've made a conscious and careful decision, stick with it. Stick to who you are, because you are you for a reason. What you can bring into the world, someone else may not. Someone else will be busy bringing something else into the world, and we should spend less effort trying to make everybody comfortable with the idea that we're not all the same, because it makes people uncomfortable if we don't follow the same path. I know even in my experiences in the knit industry, I don't really do things the way that a lot of people do. And I'm a head scratcher for some, like, what are you doing? Why are there no photos of you? Why do you not go to things? Why do you, you know, you're there, but you're not. Like, what are you doing? And that used to really bother me. I think, am I doing this wrong? But I feel like if it feels right to you, stick to your vision, because in the end, the people that you can service will find you. Yeah, and definitely. You can, with passion, bring your best with it when you don't edit for the consumption of others. So yeah, I tell myself, don't worry about that stuff so much.
And I mean, that's the kind of advice every teenager or young adult really needs to understand. Because I think for a lot of us, when we were growing up, we're doing these things that we thought we had to fit
Yeah,
in, to fit into
absolutely.
society, to fit into our families. You know, there was this path. You go to college, you do this, and you do this, you get married, you have the kids. But that's not the path for everyone. And if you don't follow that path, then you're looked at like you're a
Failing
weirdo.
at life in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you're lacking
Yeah.
or you're not happy. And it is so important that we all follow the path that you said that, you know, that feels good to us. Even if it doesn't look good on paper, if it doesn't look good to people around us, as long as it works for what we're trying to accomplish for ourselves. So
Yeah, I think that one of the things that that's so important is that, which I didn't realize back then, is that it's not just for yourself that you need to stick. It's not just so that you can feel fulfilled in your purpose in life. It's actually so that you can make that path for the next person that doesn't actually follow the script. Because if they see you survive not following the status quo, they might be all the more encouraged that they can survive and make different decisions and make bolder choices and, you know, get through. So I think that we kind of, it's not just for our satisfaction. I think that we have an obligation to others to live our truly best selves so that they can see that, you know what, I don't have to compromise on who I am, and I can be, and I can inspire, and I can blaze a different path for the next person and the next one. So yeah, definitely.
so
That's a hard one to ignore.
Yeah. So how does that show up in your design work? You know, blazing that different path that's so different from everyone, from what is expected.
Well, for starters, my patterns are fairly long, as you know.
They are.
And
They're
you know,
thorough and long.
yeah. And look, a lot of the, you know, I'm aware of the industry. Obviously, I know how things get published. I'm not unaware that, you know, I can't. I've written, just as an exercise for myself, I've written my patterns short style. And if your objective is to create instructions for the reproduction of the sample that I have knit, short style works. It's enough. But that's not my goal. My goal is use this sample that I have knit as your inspiration for what you may like to knit, and take the path with me through my pattern to find where is a good exit for you, where is a moment where you might make a tweak, a change, an adjustment, a personalization. That is what is valuable about being an independent designer for me, is the fact that I get to do that. I can, you know, I write notes in my patterns directly to the knitter. I feel like, yes, how joyful it is that I can write an actual note to someone who's going to pick up a pattern and go, hey, by the way, when you're doing this bit, have a think about this, or don't worry about that. It's so great. And if I had tried to be a designer by following how patterns are written or are supposed to be, I never would be doing that. So when I first started to do that, I thought, yeah, people are going to find this weird. But from feedback of the people that actually knit my patterns, I think people really like it. They enjoy the fact that it's there. I think it empowers people. So if I had convinced myself out of that deviation, if you will, it would never be there.
Yeah.
So I now embrace, if I have an idea that I think might be useful, I include it, because look, people can always ignore what doesn't work for them. I put it in, you pick from my pattern what path is your best path and ignore the rest.
So yes, when I first tech edited one of your first designs, I was a little concerned because it was so long, and I was like, because I come from a background of tech editing for magazine where everything is condensed. And I was
Exactly.
worried, but then after I got to know you more and saw like what you were putting into your design, it was like, this is so you. And as an independent designer, you get to make those decisions. You don't have to do it the way magazines do it. And I can see the conversational style of your work. So it's like, yeah, you are talking directly to the end user and not just putting out this recipe of do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's wholly you. It's you as an
Yeah.
individual that you are trying to talk directly to the knitter who is working on your pattern. So yeah, I definitely see that. So yeah, thanks for explaining that, because I think a lot of designers are worried about, reading through publications and feeling like they have to do it that way. But as an independent designer, there is no one way to do things, as long as
Exactly. And you can adapt.
Yeah.
When you want to publish for an external source, you can of course take that extra stuff out. I just did a pattern for a magazine and it was one page.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So you
it's
can
doable.
do one page. You just choose to express yourself, and that's what we want to get across to people.
So for publication where printing is costly, space is limited, of course there are edits that you can make in order for that medium to be able to get simply the instructions. And also in a publication, generally it's many people's work, so your own voice per se is not as, I don't know, not as necessary. People
you
will be
almost have
picking
to
up
use the voice of the publication.
precisely. Yes.
So the people who are buying the magazine have that consistency across the whole magazine. Whereas you,
so they
as
can
an independent designer, you can just be you and just let yourself just be whoever you want to be.
Yes. For me, it's like when you are getting my pattern directly from me, you are getting me with a cup of coffee in your living room going, hey, let's do this thing together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
And that comes through clearly in your pattern, that it is you that is in the pattern, walking along the way with the design, with the knitter, holding their hand as they're stitching along. So that comes through very clearly.
Oh, good.
So thank you for making that point.
Yeah.
So, what is your best advice for a designer that's starting out right now? I mean, we touched on a lot of things about using your own voice and doing things your own way, but do you have any other advice that you might want to give, or just sum it up in sentences?
I think that get to know yourself, because I with social media you get a little insight into people taking on the design process here and there, and you would be very familiar with the frustrations that people experience, etc. For me, one thing I do see a lot is people giving themselves a very hard time for not being exactly what they are viewing in the industry, and also having unreasonable expectations. I think that if you know yourself well enough, you know what buttons make something satisfying for you. Some people are driven by income,
external validations,
and they need that, and that's fine. That if that's who you are, seek that, and when you get that, enjoy that. Don't be upset about other elements that you might not be getting, and vice versa. Like, for example, I'm not a particularly public person. Because I don't want to be the face of my knitting. I want you to be the face of my knitting. That's the whole point of making my patterns the way that I do. I want people to see themselves in the work. I don't want them to see me in the work. Yes, I'm there to help you with the instructions, but that's it. So, but I'm an introvert, so obviously external validation's not really high on my list of priorities. But there are people for whom that is important, and that's totally cool. If that is you, go out and get it. Go public, take photos, be with people. Don't be ashamed if you... We were talking about my best friend earlier, and one of the things is, she loves my shawls. I do a lot of lace things, so, they're not, sort of shy everyday pieces, and she loves wearing them. She wears them with flair because she is a massive extrovert. She loves all eyes on her. She loves the attention they give her. It makes her so, so happy. I don't judge it because it's not me, but it is totally her, and she loves it. It makes her happy. So I think, yes, if you're going to be a designer, you're not just like, we're not all cardboard copies of each other. Find out who you are and just live it. Be happy with it. Your audience will find you. You know, I'm not particularly great with the advertising. I don't really like to go, yay, look at my stuff. It's not, I struggle with that part, I have to say. But people found me. So, you know, your audience does actually find you if your voice is clearly you. I think where people go really wrong is they try to be everybody. They try to be like somebody else. They try to model their career on, you know, every person that they think is successful. And the thing is, don't do that to yourself. You are absolutely going to be disappointed. Find out what your voice is, speak it. People will find you. So
and we couldn't end on a better note than just be yourself and just be who you are, instead of just trying to copy other personas and trying to be other people. Just be yourself.
Because it's not just dissatisfying to you, it is confusing for your knitters. It's palpable when somebody isn't really comfortable in what they're doing. It does come through. And why should knitters be confused by that? Why should, you know, you want to be able to say, this is me, I'm here, what can I do for you? You know, that's a great feeling. So,
and it's painful to see when a new designer or experienced designer putting on these different images of who they think they should be, and you know deep down that they're just not happy. And it's like, just try to be one thing. You keep putting on these different faces. You know, this week you're trying to be this person, or just be your own self and try to be happy for you, like you were saying before. It's just find what makes you happy. Embrace that 6-year-old you and just kind of like, what truly will make me happy in this moment doing this thing.
Because every time that you question that, I do actually think it has an impact on your creativity. A lot of people sometimes say things like, you know, they've lost their mojo, they've lost their design mojo, they've lost their knit mojo. I actually think that that's where it goes, in all the stress of worrying about how the end appears. I think that
will see you.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I know some people really get me very quickly. Some people really don't, no matter how much they're exposed to me. And I'm so okay with that, because it spares me so much time not thinking about how someone else is digesting what I'm doing. I think, you know what? I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I know what my purpose is. I know what I want to achieve. I know what I'm passionate about. That's enough for me. How someone else perceives me, that is their business. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, if there are improvements that I can make, I definitely listen. I'm not a big chit chatter on socials, but, you know, people do send messages or they'll ask questions. I really do pay huge amounts of attention to that, because I think, okay, if something in my work is not servicing people, how can I find the path for them that I haven't covered? So that's wonderful. But that's not about external perception. That's about the actual work. And so that's something I'm very comfortable letting in. But what one person thinks of you versus another, I mean, for the love of God, save yourself the misery.
And I think that comes with age, though, because I think as I'm hitting this fourth decade of my life, I'm thinking less about what people think and just like more about what's going to make me and my family happy.
Yes.
So I think a lot of that comes with age and time and just learning yourself and just trying to be comfortable in your own skin. Because when you're 20, you're putting on a whole lot of skin trying to figure out which one is going to fit you the best. But by the time you're 30s and 40s, it's like, okay, I know who I am. I know what I want to be.
Yeah, and I think that does give you the courage to actually drop a lot of the things that, you know, because society is a bit like that, let's be honest. I mean, we've sort of engineered ourselves as a big group to rely on the assessment of others about who we are, which is just so stupid that we do that, like, honestly, because it doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't.
And that's why when I started the interview, I didn't start with who are you and what do you do, because while I do care about what you do and the work that you do, I care more about your inner you, you know, what you're reading, what are you doing, what are you working on right now, more than
I think that,
of like what's your job and what do you do, how much do you make, things like that.
well, it's true. I'm not, in all honesty, I probably wouldn't have had this chat with someone else. I feel comfortable with you, obviously, because we know each other, and, you know, I think you get what I'm about, so that makes it really easy to talk to you. But the idea that, you know, you will present a specific, you know, way that you're going to be a designer, or that you will, you know, showcase some part of, I don't know, your personality, it always seems so very strange. It's like, you know, just knit my pattern or just chat with me while knitting. That's how you'll get to know me. Issuing some weird statement of, I am Dom and I do the following things. It's just so
impersonal, and
it's not, and I don't think it serves anybody. I don't think it helps anybody see parts of themselves that, you know, maybe there's someone else out there who also struggles with, you know, some of the constraints of what knitting appears to look like. Because look, if the conversations of this year on Instagram have, you know, shown very clearly, it's that knitting is a very different experience for you know, across the board. It is not the same creature for everybody. And I think that the more that people be honest about who they are, people who need a place, people who don't find those comfy couches in the imagery that is sort of sold as this is what knitting is, they can actually find you. They can find each other. They can go, oh, yes, I feel that way too. And I think, yes, my guiding, I guess, viewpoint on life is, what would 6-year-old me think of this, honestly? Because 6-year-old someone else is probably sitting there going, where do I go? Just like I am. And we'll find each other. You know, because
kids, you is like, come on, sit on my couch. You know, we're pulling everybody in.
Yeah. Let's be friends.
Exactly. Where 30-year-old me is like, I don't know. I'm an introvert. What do I say? Where 6-year-old me is just like, come on, we're all just gonna sit and knit. So
yes,
I love that.
I find that talking to knitters is a very different experience than talking to industry people, because, you know, you're always like, you have to be an adult with industry people, and that's like, oh, I have to put on my, like, I know that face.
It's like, I'm gonna put on my gray suit.
What do you want to hear from me, so that you don't discount my talent, my experience, my passion, and actually get that I'm good at my job, and you should probably be interested in what I'm doing. Whereas with knitters, I don't have that problem. With knitters, it's so easy, because they're there, you're there, and you're just joyful about the knitting. And that's, you can only really have without the BS.
Exactly. And then going back to the conversations that's been going on earlier this year on Instagram, is it brought up a lot of things that seems to have been okay, but really wasn't on the surface. On the surface, It looked like it was all hunky-dory, like you said. It was like perfect. Everybody sit on the couch together and we're knitting together. But in reality, there were different couches because some people were not allowed on some couches. So I think that with the conversations that's been happening on Instagram, we're showing that there are different people in the industry, not just people with blonde hair, blue eyes, or people who wear a size 4, but there are people that have different color eyes and color hair and shapes and sizes, and we're all represented or need to be represented in the industry because we all are part of the industry.
Yeah, and look, I know that there's sort of like this machine that markets a certain look, a certain feel, and that is problematic because it diminishes not just access, but also confidence. Like, one of the reasons I do the whack along, I've had one of my very, very dear friends is a knit artist, and I saw him last week, and he said, "What the hell are you doing with this whack along business? Like, why are you live designing things? What on earth why wouldn't you just design it and then release it?" And honestly, for me, it is a yearly calibration. It is my way of keeping it completely real and showing that if you're a designer, showing that it's not always perfect, and that's fine, because it's still really good. For knitters, you don't have to use fancy pantsy yarns. You can if you want to, but you absolutely don't have to. You can make things look completely different with the colors that you choose or adjustments that you make. By doing an informal knit like that, I have found that it reminds me, like, I don't generally forget, let's be honest, but it does recalibrate me every year after putting out designs that I've pre-prepared, tech edited, etc., that this is just joy, and that you can connect with people on a really organic level, and they can come towards the knit along or leave the knit along. You don't have to finish the thing. There is no timeline, which is, I think, very freeing. And I think it allows people to go, oh, I can do it with this. Oh, I can do it like that. Yes, you can, because I'm still deciding, because I'm live designing this. And if an instruction isn't working for everybody, I will factor that in. It's a really great back and forth. And it's a very nice way for me to remember that it's real people that we affect with our work, and it's real people that affect each other when they get together to knit things. So yeah, it's a wacky thing that I do, but I really love it for that very reason. It gets you back to basics before the start of a new year every time.
Yeah.
So it's
and I love that. And I'll definitely
it washes out the yearly polish.
Well, yeah, and I'll definitely share a link to that. So if anyone wants to participate, we'll have that in there.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
So what is one question I didn't ask that you thought I should?
I don't think there is anything we didn't really cover, because we veered quite a lot all over the place.
We covered a lot.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm an introvert in the sense that I need a great deal of time by myself, but I'm not shy, and I think we actually have that in common.
Yes.
It's not shyness. It's just when I
need time to recharge after this conversation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We can both have a lie down after this.
Yeah, I will. I will for sure.
Yeah.
So
no, I think we've covered quite a lot, actually.
Awesome. So let's wrap up. So tell me about what's coming up next, and where can the listeners find you? And we'll link everything in the show notes.
Well, you can find me on Instagram under Dominique Trad. I don't post a great deal, and I post sporadically. So if you're okay with that should work for you. I'm also on Ravelry with respect to my work, but I don't really do a great deal of chit chat there. If you need to contact me about a pattern, please Ravelry message me. I will read it. That's probably the best. That's pretty much it. I don't like to be in too many places. It's too much. It's just too much.
So what's coming up next? Are you working on any new projects we should know about?
There's a few. Look, I'm always like, I'm going to do something else, and then a bunch of shawl ideas pop into my brain, and I can't help but have them in there. So yeah, basically I'll just be following the thread of the things that pop into my head. So I've got quite a few designs that are sort of at elementary stages all over the place. So things will be coming out. I do want to take it slow this year. I'm very passionate about an idea. When I get it, I can't help but work it, and I don't take breaks like I should. just because I love it so much, you know. I'm not even a little bit ambitious. I just completely love doing it. So I'd like to slow down my release rate a little bit this year. And yeah, probably keep on as I've been doing. I would like to find an opportunity to do a little bit of teaching. But I don't really like the way that things are taught. So I need to find a way that I can reach people about the things that I want to share. So that's something that I'm working on in my head, and hopefully probably towards the end of the year might come to some sort of fruition. But yeah, that's on the cards, because I really do love seeing knitters face to face, but not for a selfie, you know. I want to be there knitting with you.
Yeah.
I want to chat with you. I want to, you know, sort of get that
sit down and have real conversations. That's what I like doing, not just like, oh, let's chit chat, you know, those short 2-second conversations. I like deep conversations like we're having now.
Yeah, because it gets really, you miss out, you know. I want to get to know you. I want to know what you're about. I want to know why you picked this thing that you're working on.
Yeah, that why.
Yeah,
and you can't
and
get
you don't
that
get
in
time
like
for why in short things, do you?
Yeah, you can't.
No. Yeah, so that's sort of, I want to figure out some sort of program where I can get to teach some of the things that I'd really like to pass on that I don't actually think are being talked about a great deal, because knitting isn't just the stitches. And that's what I feel that I could bring to the table that people would very much benefit from, and I would enjoy sharing. I just got to figure out how I'd like to do that. Yeah.
We should talk about that at some point.
Yeah, so that's sort of it. That's what's on my mind for next year. More shawls. I can't help it. I love it. It's fun.
That's okay.
Yeah, totally.
What makes you happy? Just keep doing more of that.
Precisely. When it's finished, I'll know.
Perfect.
You know, then you move on to the next thing. I actually started off as a sweater knitter. The shawl thing was, I don't even know how that happened, to be honest with you. But there it is. So if that's what's inspiring me, that's what I do.
Just go where the flow takes you.
Precisely. That's how I operate, because it keeps me joyful, and my 6-year-old is very happy that way.
Well, thank you so much, Dom, for taking the time to chat with us and share your story and share what's inspiring you, and just thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's so nice to get to talk to you in person.
I know, after all this time, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks very much. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast all the way to the end. Everything we mentioned will be listed in the show notes at tianconnaughton.com/realtalkwithtn. If you have questions on anything I've mentioned, or if you just want to book a coaching session, go to tianconnaughton.com/contact-us to get in touch. You got this.